When I first met my wife, she seemed like the perfect woman, loving, caring, and completely devoted to me and our family. But over the years, things changed. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the cracks began to show. I had no idea that beneath the surface, something far darker was brewing. As time went on, my wife's secret life began to take root. She started spending more time away from home, making excuses to be out with friends or working late. At first, I didn't think much of it. Life gets busy, and we all need space. But what I didn't realize was that, during those absences, she was meeting her lover, building a relationship that would eventually tear apart the very foundation of our family. But my wife didn't just keep her affair a secret from me. She also brought our children into her web of lies. She convinced them, over time, that what she was doing was justified, because she deserved it. She told them that I wasn't the man I used to be, that I didn't understand her needs, and that the affair was something she had to do to feel alive again. Her manipulation went deeper. She made it clear to both my son and daughter that if they ever found out, they should protect her at all costs. She even painted me as the villain in their eyes, making them believe that I was neglecting her, not appreciating her, and failing as a husband and father. This twisted version of reality was carefully crafted over months, maybe even years. But what truly hurt the most was that my kids, my own flesh and blood, were torn between loyalty to their mother and the reality of the man who had given them everything. My son, who I thought had inherited my sense of integrity, was the first to defend her when everything fell apart. My daughter, who had always been my little girl, was now emotionally conflicted, unable to reconcile the mother she had been raised to worship with the truth of what she had done. My wife had somehow turned them into her allies, making them feel complicit in her betrayal. She had convinced them that protecting her from the fallout was more important than telling the truth, more important than keeping our family together. It all began when I decided to come home early from a business trip. I hadn't told anyone. It was meant to be a surprise, a chance to reconnect with my wife and kids. Work had been keeping me away too often, and I felt guilty for not spending enough time with them. As I parked the car and walked up the driveway, I noticed something unusual. Our curtains were drawn, even though it was broad daylight. Inside, the house was eerily quiet. Normally, I'd be greeted by the sound of laughter or the blaring of the kids' TV shows. Instead, there was silence, broken only by faint, muffled voices coming from upstairs. My heart sank as I realized something wasn't right. Clutching my briefcase, I quietly ascended the stairs, my pulse quickening with each step. As I approached our bedroom door, I could make out laughter, low, deep, and unfamiliar. A voice I didn't recognize. My chest tightened, and my mind raced through possibilities, each one worse than the last. When I pushed the door open, the sight before me left me frozen in place. A large, burly man, shirtless, with a hairy back, stood in the middle of my bedroom. My wife was kneeling in front of him, her hands clutching his belt as if she had been interrupted mid-act. She gasped when she saw me, her face pale with shock. The man turned to face me, unfazed, a smirk spreading across his lips as if he had won some unspoken battle. That smirk made my blood boil. Before I could react, I saw movement from the corner of my eye. For a moment, I thought I was hallucinating. But the reality hit me like a freight train when my son stepped into the room. He wasn't shocked or confused. Instead, he looked furious. At me. "Get off him, loser!" my son shouted, pushing me back as I instinctively took a step forward. "Mom deserves a better man than you." The words stung deeper than any wound ever could. My own son, the boy I had raised, stood there defending this stranger who had invaded my home and my marriage. I was too stunned to speak, my mind unable to process the betrayal unfolding before me. The man, still smirking, raised his hands mockingly. "Relax, buddy. It's not as bad as it looks," he said, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Not as bad as it looks?" I snapped, my voice trembling with rage. My fists clenched as I took another step toward him, but before I could do anything, I felt another presence enter the room. "Dad! Wait!" My daughter's voice rang out. She stood in the doorway, her face flushed with panic. I froze, my eyes darting between her, my wife, and the man who had just destroyed my world. My daughter's presence should have brought me comfort, but instead, her words only added to the chaos. "Dad, you have to know something," she said, her voice breaking. "What is it?" I shouted, my patience wearing thin. Her lips quivered as she hesitated. Whatever she was about to say, it was clear it wasn't going to make things better. My daughter took a shaky breath before stepping forward. Her eyes, usually full of warmth and innocence, now held a heaviness I had never seen before. "Dad, I didn't want you to find out like this, but it's true. Mom, she's been seeing him for months. It wasn't just a fling. It's been going on behind your back. And we knew." The weight of her words felt like a blow to the chest. My legs nearly buckled beneath me, but I steadied myself by gripping the doorframe. The truth was finally spilling out, and it was worse than I could have ever imagined. I turned to my wife, my heart pounding in my ears. How long have you been lying to me?" She stood there, silent, unable to meet my gaze, her face twisted with shame, but I could see something else in her eyes. Fear. Fear of losing everything, but most of all, fear of me. My son, still glaring at me, crossed his arms. "She didn't want to hurt you, Dad, but we had to protect Mom. She's been through enough." Protect Mom? They were all in on it. My wife, my son, and now my daughter, who had betrayed me by covering up her mother's affair. The anger within me swelled, mixing with an overwhelming sense of helplessness. I had built this family, and yet here I was, the last to know, the fool who had been kept in the dark. I took a step back, trying to process everything. "So, what? You all just stood by and watched while she destroyed our marriage? Did you think I wouldn't find out?" My daughter's eyes filled with tears. "Dad, it's not like that. We didn't know how to tell you. Mom said if you ever found out, it would destroy you, and we didn't want that." I shook my head, the frustration making it hard to breathe. "Destroy me? What about the damage you've already done? What about the lies you've been telling me for all these years?" Here's the explanation about how the wife involved your son and daughter, providing a deeper understanding of their actions and motivations. Now that this background is clear, would you like me to continue with the next section? The room felt like it was closing in on me as I tried to process everything my daughter had just revealed. The anger, the betrayal, and the confusion collided in a whirlwind, leaving me feeling like I was losing control of everything I thought I knew. I couldn't look at my wife anymore. I just couldn't. The woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted with everything I had. She was the one who had destroyed the foundation of our family. But it wasn't just her. My son, who I had raised to be strong and honorable, was now standing by her side, as if defending the very thing that had broken us apart. "How could you do this to me?" I finally managed to say, my voice trembling. "How could you make them part of this? How could you make them believe I was the problem?" My wife's eyes were filled with tears, but her words were empty. "I didn't want this to happen," she whispered. "I didn't want to hurt you. But I couldn't help myself. I needed something more." I shook my head in disbelief. "You needed something more? You've been lying to me for months, maybe longer, and you needed something more?" My son stepped forward, his defiance unmistakable. "Dad, stop. You don't understand. Mom was miserable. She needed to be happy. We just wanted to make sure she was okay." His words hit me like a slap in the face. We just wanted to make sure she was okay. As if my happiness, my pain, didn't matter. As if my years of dedication to this family meant nothing. I turned to my daughter, hoping for some sign of remorse, some trace of the girl I had raised. But all I saw was a sad, conflicted expression. She had been manipulated, just like my son. "Dad, you don't know the whole story," she said quietly. "Mom, she's not the same person anymore. We just didn't want to lose her. We thought if we stood by her, she'd come back to us." The pain in her voice made me want to break down, but I couldn't. Not now. I had to stay strong. I had to find some way to fix this. But the truth was, there was no fixing this. The air was thick with silence. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears, the weight of the moment settling like a lead blanket over me. My mind was racing, unable to process the betrayal that had just unfolded. My wife, my son, and my daughter. All of them had turned against me. All of them had chosen to protect a lie instead of the truth. I couldn't just stand there, pretending that everything would be okay. I couldn't simply forgive them, not after all that had happened. What kind of man would I be if I allowed this betrayal to go unpunished? If I allowed my wife's affair and my children's complicity to go unnoticed? I had to take control. "Mom, Dad, please listen to me," my son pleaded, his voice breaking as he looked between me and my wife. "We didn't want it to end like this. We're sorry. Please, don't make this worse than it already is." I didn't even know what to say to him anymore. How could I explain to him that his defense of his mother, his willingness to protect her no matter the cost, had destroyed me? I had always tried to be a good father to him, to show him what it meant to be a man of integrity. And yet, here he was, the son I thought I knew, siding with the very person who had shattered everything. I looked at my wife, but there was nothing left in her expression. No apology, no regret, no remorse. She had made her choice. That's when I knew. There would be no reconciliation. There would be no saving this. This was the end, and I had to make sure they knew it. "Get out," I said, my voice cold and steady, despite the storm of emotions raging inside me. "Both of you? Take your lies, your betrayal, and leave my house." My wife stood there, stunned, her mouth opening and closing as though she were searching for the right words. My son tried to protest, but I held up my hand. You had your chance. You all had your chance, and you chose to tear this family apart. I'm done. My daughter stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "Dad, please. I'm sorry. I didn't want any of this to happen. I was just trying to keep the family together." Her apology cut deep, but it wasn't enough. "It's too late for that now," I said quietly. "I don't know who you are anymore, but I don't recognize you." The words were harsh, but they felt true. They had chosen their sides, and now I had to choose mine. I was done being the victim. It was time to take control, to get revenge for everything they had taken from me. I stood there, surrounded by the remnants of a life I thought I had built. My wife, my children, and the house that was supposed to be a home. Everything I had worked for felt like it was slipping through my fingers. But one thing remained crystal clear. I had to take control. I wasn't going to let this betrayal define me. I wasn't going to let my wife and children think they could walk away from this without facing the consequences. The rage that had been building inside me now had a focus, a target. I had been betrayed by the woman I loved, and now I had to show her, and everyone else, the price of treachery. As I stood there in the hallway, 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. How could I hurt them the way they had hurt me? What was the most fitting revenge? And then it hit me. The one thing that would make them feel the weight of their actions was something I could never have imagined before. The family's reputation, their livelihood, everything they had built together would come crumbling down. It wasn't just about punishing them. It was about ensuring they never forget what they did to me. I was done being the fool who didn't see it all coming. Now, I would make them regret it for the rest of their lives. I turned to my wife, who was standing by the doorway, silently pleading with her eyes. But I didn't care. I couldn't care. The woman I had loved no longer existed to me. She was nothing more than a symbol of everything I had lost. "You want to destroy me?" I said, my voice low and venomous. "Well, you're going to watch as I destroy everything you thought you could keep. Your affair, your lies, everything will be exposed. I'll make sure you lose it all." Her face paled, but there was no regret in her eyes, only fear. She knew deep down that I wasn't bluffing. I turned to my son, who was standing off to the side, still caught in the middle of everything. "You think protecting her is going to save you? You'll regret this, too. You can't stand by her side and pretend this never happened. I'll make sure everyone knows what you did." His face crumpled, but no words came out. He was speechless, and in that moment I could see the seeds of doubt begin to form. He might not have seen it yet, but soon he would understand the depth of his mistake. And then my daughter, still standing near the door, her tears falling uncontrollably. "Dad, please, you don't have to do this. You don't have to go this far. I never wanted to hurt you." Her words stung, but they weren't enough to stop me. She had been just as complicit as the rest of them. She had kept her mother's secrets, lied to my face, and now she was trying to turn me into the bad guy for finally fighting back. "No, sweetheart," I said coldly. "You had every chance to tell me the truth. But you chose to protect her. Now, you'll watch as everything you've helped cover up comes to light." I wasn't sure what to expect from them after this, but I knew one thing. Nothing would ever be the same. As the weight of everything came crashing down, I knew there was no repairing what was left of my family. I thought about all the sacrifices I had made over the years, every sleepless night, every missed opportunity, every ounce of love I had poured into them. And for what? To be betrayed in the most unimaginable way. I looked at my wife, my son, and my daughter one last time, and made a decision that I never thought I would make. Revenge was no longer just an option. It was my way of ensuring they felt the consequences of their choices. I sat them down in the living room, where so many happy memories had been made, and calmly told them my plan. "I think we all need some time apart," I began. "You'll go to your parents' house for a few days. It'll give us all some space to think about what's happened and how to move forward." They agreed without much resistance, likely thinking this was my way of softening and finding a path to forgiveness. But forgiveness was no longer in my vocabulary. As soon as they left, I set my plan into motion. I called a realtor and put the house on the market. Every room, every piece of furniture, Every corner of this place held memories that I could no longer bear. The house sold quickly, and the money it brought in, along with my savings and other assets, was all donated to various charities. Next, I resigned from my job and cut all ties to the life I had built. The property I had worked so hard to acquire over the years, the land, the investments, was liquidated, and I made sure every penny was directed toward causes that truly needed it. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of purpose. I packed a single suitcase and moved into an old-age home on the outskirts of the city. It wasn't glamorous, but it was peaceful. No lies, no betrayal, no false smiles, just simplicity and honesty. At night, as I sat by the window of my small room, I thought about my family. I had loved them deeply, but their betrayal had cut too deep for any reconciliation. I could only hope that, one day, they would understand the pain they had caused and learn from it. I wasn't angry anymore, nor was I bitter. I had made my peace with the situation. Living a life free from deceit and betrayal was far better than holding on to a broken family. And so, with every passing day, I found solace in the quiet moments, knowing that I had chosen a life of integrity and self-respect over a life of lies. The scars of their betrayal would remain, but so would my strength in walking away. This is how I ended my chapter with them. Not with forgiveness, not with vengeance, but with the decision to rebuild my life on my own terms.
Thank you for watching, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do so and press the notification bell. This way, you'll stay updated with more shocking real-life stories.